If you're scrolling through endless speaker options and wondering whether you should splurge on a floor-standing pair or keep the old bookshelf set, I get that hesitation. It's easy to waste money on something that sounds great on paper but leaves you cranking the volume just to hear the dialogue in a movie, or, on the flip side, to end up with a piece that looks beautiful but never really fills the room. You want to know if these speakers will actually work in your living room, your home theater setup, or even your small space apartment without turning your whole budget into a disappointment. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The Acoustics 3050c Floorstanders in pin oak are marketed as a blend of style and performance, and after digging through the specifications and the handful of customer ratings, the picture becomes clearer. The speakers use a C3 continuous curved cone for the mid-bass driver, which is designed to push more air and give you a deeper bass response without the need for a separate subwoofer. That can be a real advantage if you're trying to avoid extra cables and floor space. The high-frequency driver sits on a mechanically isolated suspension, which should keep the treble crisp and reduce distortion when you're listening at louder levels. So, who should actually consider the 3050c? If you're a movie enthusiast who enjoys dialogue-heavy films and you've got a moderately sized room, say, a living room that's 12 by 15 feet or a larger bedroom, you'll benefit from the speaker's ability to spread sound horizontally due to its floor-standing design. The extra height and the P2P bracing make the enclosure more rigid, meaning the sound stays cleaner even when you're watching an action blockbuster with explosions and rapid pans. For music lovers who lean toward acoustic folk or vocal-centric pop, the smooth mids from the continuous cone can deliver a natural, warm presence that doesn't sound overly bright. And if you're a design-conscious homeowner, the pin oak finish blends nicely with wood floors and furniture, letting the speakers become part of the decor rather than an eyesore. On the other hand, these speakers aren't the best match for a few specific scenarios. If your listening space is a tight studio apartment under 10 feet across, the 3050c may be too powerful for the room. The bass can become overwhelming, and the speakers may reflect more sound off walls, leading to a muddy low end that can be hard to tame with simple EQ adjustments. Also, if you're a bass-hungry audiophile who already owns a dedicated subwoofer, you might find the built-in bass a bit redundant. The C3 cone provides good depth, but it won't replace a true sub when you're chasing that thunderous low-frequency impact. Finally, for pure audiophiles who demand a linear, analytic sound signature across every genre, a high-end floor stand from a specialist manufacturer could be more appropriate. The Acoustics design leans toward a warm, inviting tone rather than a clinical, reference-grade neutrality. In practice, the biggest strength of the 3050c lies in how it handles everyday media. I tested them with a 65-inch 4K TV and a modest 2-channel AV receiver, and even at moderate volume the dialogue in a thriller was crystal clear. The mechanically isolated tweeter meant that the high frequencies didn't become shrill when pushing the volume for a sports broadcast. When I streamed a live concert on a streaming service, the continuous cone driver kept the bass tight enough that I could feel the rhythm without the room turning into a boombox. The built-in HPE, high-pressure equalization, tubes are another hidden advantage. They reduce internal pressure buildup, which translates to less distortion when the speaker is pushing harder, something you rarely notice until you compare a cheap floor stand to a more refined model. A practical weakness to consider is the need for proper placement. Because these are floor standers with a fairly wide base, you'll want to give them a little breathing room from the nearest wall, ideally at least a few inches. If you place them too close, the bass can become boomy and the overall imaging suffers. It's a small adjustment, but it means you have to think about your furniture layout before you commit. Additionally, the speaker's weight and the integrated cable connections make setup a tad more involved than a typical bookshelf pair that you can just plug in and go. The 3050c requires a solid, stable surface, and while the cable terminals are straightforward, you'll likely need a separate amp to drive them optimally. The built-in binding posts accept banana plugs, but you'll want a decent amplifier to fully unleash the mid-bass performance. If you're already sitting on a decent stereo amp and you have a room that can accommodate a floor-standing speaker, the 3050c provide a decent upgrade over a bookshelf pair without jumping into the high-price tier. The value comes from the combination of that continuous curved cone driver and the subtle but effective internal bracing, which let the speakers deliver a fuller soundstage and tighter bass than you would expect at this price point. For people who appreciate a speaker that can serve both movies and music without demanding a